Good morning to all of you. Today my topic is machine learning and machine learning techniques. First of all, what is a machine learning? So what is a machine learning? Machine learning nothing but machine learning enables a machine to automatically learn from data and improve the performance from experience, and also it create the outputs based on the experience. That is called machine learning. So what is a machine learning? So machine learning nothing but it enables a machine to automatically learn based on the previous experience. That's why it is called machine learning. Then how does machine learning works? So machine learning system learns from historical data, builds the prediction models, and whenever it receives new data, it creates the output based on the previous experience. That is called machine learning. So next one is what are the types of machine learning? Based on the methods and way of the learning, machine learning is divided into mainly four types that are supervised machine learning, unsupervised machine learning, reinforcement learning, and last one is semi-supervised learning. First of all, what is a supervised machine learning? Supervised machine learning nothing but it is the types of machine learning in which machines are trained based on the labeled training data, and on the basic data it predicts the outputs. So first, what is the labeled data? Labeled data nothing but you have to give the input data is already tagged with the correct output. So that is the supervised learning. Supervised machine learning is a type of machine learning in which machines are trained using labeled training data. Based on that, it predicts the output. What is the labeled trained data? Labeled trained nothing but data is already tagged with the correct output. So based on that, this is called labeled data. Next one, in supervised learning, the training data provided to the machine works as a supervisor. For example, it teaches the machines to predict the output correctly. It applies the same concept as a student learned in supervision of the teacher. Next one, how supervised learning works. In supervised learning, models are trained using labeled data set. Based on that, so machines are learned, and whenever the model learns about each type of data, once the training process is completed, the model is tested on the basics of test data. So and then it predicts the output. So for example, take first you take the label data. So based on that, you train the data based on the label data. Here, for example, take hexagon, square, trains. These are different types of labels. If your hexagon, if sides are 5, then it can be labeled as a hexagon. If a square, 4 types are equal, then it will be treated as a square. If you take triangle, if it consists only three columns, then that means you have this called triangle. This can based on that you can model the data. Based on that, after that you have to predict the output based on the training data, and you have to give the text data. If you give the square, if you give the square, the label size is 4, then it will text data is square. If you give the training data, text data is triangle. The sides are 3 sides, but 3 sides are not equal, then it can be treated as a triangle. Next one. Suppose you have a data set of different types of shapes, which include square, rectangle, triangle, and polygon. Now the first step is that you need to train the model for each shape. If the given shapes are 4 sides, then all sides are equal, then it will be labeled as a square. If the given shape has 3 sides, then it will be labeled as a triangle. If the given shape has 6 equal sides, then it will be labeled as a hexagon. Now after training, you test our model using test set data, and the task is modeled by identify the shape. Next one. What are the steps involved in supervised learning? First, determine the type of the training data set. Second point is collect or gather the labeled training data. Once labeled data collected, then you have to split that training data into 2 training sets. One is the training data, and the second one is test data set. Once data divided these 2 data sets, you have to determine the input features of the training data set, which should have enough knowledge so that the models can accurately predict the output. Determine the suitable algorithm for the model, such as support vector machines and decision tree and etc. So based on the determine the algorithm. After that, execute the algorithm on training data set. Sometimes you need to validate the sets as the control parameters, which are the subset of the training data set. evaluate the accuracy of the model by providing the test set data. If the model creates the correct output, which means that our model is accurate. If the model correct the create the output, if the model does not correct the output, which means that our model is not accurate. Based on that, you have to accurate the model. Next one, what are the supervised machine learning algorithms? These are two types. One is regression and second one is classification. So supervised learning algorithm can be divided into two things. One is regression, second one is classification. So what is the regression? Regression nothing but regression algorithm are used if there is a relationship between the two input variable and output variable. It is used for the prediction of continuous variables such as weather forecasting, market trends, etc. If you use these prediction continuous variables, then you have to use the regression. So what is the regression? Regression algorithm are used if there is a relationship between input variable and output variable, then you have to use the regression. Regression algorithm can be used for the continuous variables such as weather forecasting and marketing trends, etc. Then what is the classification? So what is the classification? Classification algorithm used when the output variable is categorical. If the output variable categorical means, which means it can have two classes, either yes or no, male or female, true or false. These two classes nothing but categorical variables. If the algorithm used when output variable is categorical, then you have to use the classification techniques. Which means here two category variables means categorical means such as two classes only, whether yes or no and true or false or fail or male and etc. So this is nothing but a classification. So what is the regression? In regression you have to use the regression algorithm if there is a relation between input and output variable. For example, take if you that is in regression you have to use continuous variable, whether is weather forecasting and marketing etc. Whereas in the classification are used when output variable is categorical, means either two or it contains only two classes, whether it is yes or no or true or false or fail or male. So this is nothing but a classification. Next one, what is the unsupervised machine learning? What is the supervised machine learning? In supervised machine learning, you have to create the output based on the label data, whereas in unsupervised learning, you have to create the output based on the unlabeled data. For example, take in previous topic, you have to learn about what is the supervised machine learning, in which models are trained using labeled data under the supervision on training data. But there may be many cases in which you do not have labeled data and need to find the hidden pattern from the given data set. So you have to solve this type of cases. In machine learning, you need to solve unsupervised learning technique. In unsupervised learning technique, you don't use the labeled data. In the unsupervised learning, a type of machine learning in which models are trained using unlabeled data set and are allowed to act on that data without any supervision. Then for example, suppose the supervised learning algorithm is given as input data set containing images and different types of cats and dogs. The algorithm is never trained upon the given data set, which means it does not have any idea about the features of the data set. The task of the unsupervised learning algorithm is to identify the image features on their own. Unsupervised learning algorithm will perform this task by clustering the image dataset into groups according to the similarities between the images. For example, take two datasets. One is cats and second one is dogs. You have to, based on the similarities, it says that it is a cat. If similarities are based on the cat, then it says that it is a cat dataset. If the similarities are based on the dogs, and it says that it is a dog dataset. Based on the similarities, you can identify the images based on the similarity. That is called unsupervised learning. In unsupervised learning, you have to identify the images based on the similarities. If the image is if your image is cat, how to say that it is image class based on the cat similarity. That's why you can say that it is a cat. Next one is dog. If the similarities are based on the dog, and it is a dog. Based on the similarities, you can specify the unsupervised learning. Why you have to use unsupervised learning? Below are some main reasons which describe the importance of unsupervised learning. So unsupervised learning is helpful for finding useful insights from the data. Unsupervised learning is much similar as human learns to think by their own experience, which means it goes closer to real artificial intelligence. Unsupervised learning works on unlabeled data and uncategorized data, which makes unsupervised learning more important. In real world, you do not always have input data with the corresponding output. So to solve such cases, you need unsupervised learning. Then what is the working of unsupervised learning? Here, working of unsupervised learning can be understood by the following diagram. Here, first take the input raw data. It is called unlabeled data. So based on the similarities, you have to processing the data. If the output is dark, based on the if the your output is dark, how to say that it is dark? Based on the similarities, based on that you have to, it is a dark. If your output is cat, based on the similarities, cat similarities, output contain cat. That means it contains similarities of the cat. That's why it is a cat. So here you take in the unlabeled input data, which means it is not categorized and corresponding outputs are not also given here. Now this unlabeled input data is fed to the machine learning model in order to train it. Firstly, it will interrupt the raw data to find hidden patterns from the data, and then will apply the suitable algorithms such as k-means, clustering, decision tree, etc. Once it applies the suitable algorithm divides the data object into groups according to the similarities and difference between the objects. This is called unsupervised learning. Next, types of unsupervised learning. So unsupervised learning can be divided into two types. One is clustering, second one is association. Unsupervised learning can be divided into two types, clustering and association. Next one, what is the clustering? What is the association? Clustering nothing but clustering is a method of grouping the object into clusters. That means you have to group the object in different clusters. That is called clustering. Clustering nothing but it is a method of grouping the object into different clusters, so that the object is most similarities remain into the one group, and as less are no similarities with the object of another group. That means cluster. What is the clustering? Clustering is a method of grouping the object into clusters so as that object with most similarities remains into groups that can be divided into one cluster, and as less or no similarities with the object of another group. So the cluster can be divided into two groups. One is most similarities can be defined in one cluster. With less or no similarities can be defined in another cluster. So cluster analysis find the commonalities between the data objects and categorize them as per the presence and absence of those commonalities. Next, what is association? In association rules is an unsupervised learning method which is used for finding the relationship between the variables in the large database. If you relation between large database, then you have to use association rule. So it determines the set of items that occur together in data set. Association rule makes marketing strategy more effective, such as people who buy X item, suppose a bread, and also trying to purchase Y, butter or jam item. This typical example rule is the market basket analysis. For example, take one example here. For example, take suppose such a people who buy X item. For example, X item is suppose a bread. If you buy bread and also X is also try to purchase the Y. Here Y nothing but butter or jam item. This is called market basket analysis example. This is the example of the basket market analysis. This is called association. Next one, what is the reinforcement learning? So here machine learning algorithm the three types. One is supervised learning, unsupervised learning, and reinforcement learning. Now you discuss about what is a reinforcement learning. So what is a reinforcement learning? Reinforcement learning is a feedback based machine learning technique in which an agent learns to behave in an environment by performing the action and seeing the result of action. For each good action, the agent gets positive feedback, and for each bad action, the agent gets negative feedback or penalty. So this is called reinforcement learning. So what is the reinforcement learning? Is a feedback based machine learning technique in which an agent learns to behave in an environment by performing the action and seeing the result of the action. For each good action, the agent gets positive feedback, and for each bad action the agent get the negative feedback or penalty. Based on that you have to learn the feedback based machine learning technique. This is called reinforcement learning. Reinforcement learning, the agent gets automatically use feedback without any label data, unlike supervised learning. Unlike supervised learning, here there is no label data. Based on that, the agent get the automatically use the feedback. So since there is no label data, so the agent is bound to learn by its experience only. Reinforcement learning solves a specific type of problem where decision making is sequential and the goal is long term, such as game playing, robotics, etc. So this is called reinforcement learning. So what is the reinforcement learning? Reinforcement learning is a feedback based learning technique in which agent gets the learn to behave in an environment by performing the actions. What are the actions performed by the agent? Here two type of actions are performed. One is for a good action, it gets the positive feedback, and for each bad action, it gets the negative feedback. Based on that, the agent perform the action. This is called feedback based machine learning technique. Next one. The agent interacts with the environment and exploits it by itself. The primary goal of an agent in reinforcement learning is to improve the performance by getting the maximum positive rewards. So if you get more positive reward, then only it perform the machine. So based on the positive rewards, then only the machine can improve the performance. The agent learns with the process of hit and try, and based on that experience it learns to perform the task in better way. Hence we can say that reinforcement learning is a type of machine learning method where an intelligent agent computer program interact with the environment and learn to act with that. How a robotic dog learns the movement of his arms is an example of reinforcement learning. This is the example of reinforcement learning. Next, so what is the supervised machine learning algorithm? So supervised machine algorithm two types. One is regression. Second one is regression classification. First, what is the regression analysis? What is the regression? Regression analysis it is used to relationship between dependent and independent variable. Then only can use the regression analysis. So regression analysis is a statistical method to model the relationship between dependent and independent variables with one or more independent variables. More specifically, regression analysis help us to understand how the value of the dependent variable is changing corresponding to an independent variable when other dependent variables are held fixed. It creates the continuous real value such as SR, such as temperature, age, salary, price, etc. Next, you can understand the concept of regression analysis by in the below example. Suppose there is a market company A who does various advertisements every year and get sales on that. The below list shows the advertisement made by the company in last 5 years and corresponding to sales. These are the example. Last 5 years the sales can be first in $90 advertisement. The sales is 1,000. If you 120 advertisement, if you see our sales is company sales is $1,300. If you advertisement 150, the sales is $1,800. The sales is $1,200. If the advertisement cost is $130, then the sales cost is $1,380. What about 200? If you 200, then how much sales can be get for the following? How much sales can be get the sales under 200? Now you can use this here. Now the company wants to do the advertisement 200 in the year 2023 and wants to know the prediction about the sales for this year. So solve this type of prediction problem. You can machine learning. You need to use the regression analysis. So regression analysis is one of the easiest and most popular machine learning algorithm. It is a statistical method that is used for predictive analysis. Linear regression makes prediction for the continuous real or numeric variables such as sales, salary, age, product price, etc. So linear regression algorithm shows a linear relationship between independent y and one or more dependent y and then one or more independent variables, hence is called linear regression. Since linear regression shows the relationship between, which means that it finds how the values of corresponding variable is changing according to the values of the independent variable. The linear regression model provides a sloped straight line representing the relationship between the variables. Consider the following example here. Here it shows the relationship between dependent variable and independent variable. Here x-axis it is a independent variable, in y-axis it is a dependent variable. Here it shows the relationship between the dependent and independent variable. If you use x direction, this is called independent variable. If you use y, this is a dependent variable. It shows the data points. Based on that, we draw one slight line between these two data points. This is called line of regression. Here these points are line of regression. These are called data points. Here the y equal to here equation is y equal to a0 plus a1 x plus sigma. Here y nothing but dependent variable, x nothing but independent variable. A0 intercept the line. Here a1 is a linear regression of coefficient whale. Sigma is random error. The value of x and y variable are training data set for linear regression model representation. Here types of linear regression. What is the linear regression? Can be divided into two types of regression: simple linear regression and multiple linear regression. What is simple linear regression? If a single independent variable is used to predict the value of a numerical dependent variable, then such a linear regression algorithm is called a simple linear regression. What is simple linear regression? If a single independent variable is used to predict the value of the numerical dependent variable, then such linear regression is called the simple linear regression. So what is the multiple linear regression? If more than one independent variable is used to predict the value of the numerical dependent variable, then such linear regression algorithm is called multiple linear regression. What is a multiple linear regression? If more than one independent variable is used to predict the value of the numerical dependent variable, then such cases the linear regression algorithm is called multiple linear regression. So linear regression line. What is the linear regression line? A line showing the relationship between the dependent and independent variable is called regression line. If you draw a line between the dependent and independent variable, then it is called regression line. A regression line can show the two type of relationship here. What is the positive linear relationship? Second one is negative linear relationship. What is the positive linear relationship? If the dependent variable increases on the y-axis and independent variable increases on x-axis, then such relationship is termed as a positive linear relationship. So what is a positive linear relationship? If the dependent variable increases on y-axis and the independent variable also increase the x-axis, both axes you increase the variables. So what is the first one? If the increase the dependent variable increase the y-axis and also increase the independent variable on the x-axis, this is called positive linear relationship. In positive linear relationship, you have to increase the both axes, whether it is x-axis or y-axis. In y-axis, you have to increase the dependent variable. In x-axis, you have to increase the independent variable. This is called positive linear relationship. Next, what is the negative linear relationship? What is the negative linear relationship here? If the dependent variable increases on y-axis and the independent variable also increases on y-axis, so this is called such relationship is called negative relationship. This is called if dependent variable decrease the y-axis and independent variable also increase the x-axis. Here you can decrease the y-axis, whereas an increase the x-axis is called a negative linear relationship. If the dependent variable decreases on the y-axis and the independent variable increases the x-axis, then such relationship is called negative linear relationship. How to draw the best fit line here? When working with linear regression, our main goal is to find the best fit line. That means that error between the predicted values and actual values should be minimized. So the best line will have the least error. Then the different values for weights on coefficient of lines A0, A1 gives a different lines of regression. So you need to calculate the best value for A0, A1 to find the best fit line. So you calculate this, use the cost function. Based on the cost function, you have to find the best fit line here. What is the cost function? The different values of weights or coefficient of lines A0, A1 gives the different lines of regression, and the cost function is easier to estimate the values of the coefficient for the best fit line. Cost function optimizes the regression coefficient or weights. It measures how the linear regression model is performing. You can use the cost function to find the accuracy of the mapping function, which maps the input variable to the output variable. This mapping function is also known as the hypothesis function. For linear regression, you use the mean square error cost function, which is the average of square error occurred between the predicted values and actual values. It can be written as mean square is equal to 1 to n 1 into 1 by sigma 1 to n y of I minus a1 x of plus a0 whole square. This is called mean square error, where a total number of observations here y nothing by actual value. Next, gradient descent is to minimize the mean square error by calculating the gradient of the cost function. The regression model uses the gradient descent to update the coefficient of the lane by reducing the cost function. It is done by the random selection of values of coefficient, and then iteratively update the values to reach the minimum cost function. Then what is the classification algorithm in machine learning? As you know, the supervised machine learning algorithm can be broadly classified into regression and classification algorithm. In regression algorithm, you have to predict the output for continuous values, but to predict the category values, you need a classification algorithm. The classification algorithm is a supervised learning technique. It is used to identify the category of new observation on the basis of training data. In classification, a program learns from the given data set or observation and then classifies new observations into a number of classes or groups such as yes or no, 0 or 1, spam or not spam, cat or dog, etc. Classes can be called as targets or labels or categories. Unlike regression, the output variable of classification is a category, not a value such as green and blue, fruit or animal, etc. Since the classification algorithm is a supervised learning technique, hence it takes label input data, which means it contains input with the corresponding output. In classification algorithm, a discrete output function is mapped into input variable y equal to f of x. Here y nothing but a categorical output. The best example of machine learning classification algorithm is email spam detector. The main goal of the classification algorithm is to identify the category of a given data set, and these algorithms are mainly used to predict the output for the categorical data. The main goal of the classification algorithm is to identify the category of a given data set, and these algorithms are mainly used to predict the output for the categorical data. Classification algorithms can be better understood using the below diagram. In the below diagram, there are two classes, class A, class B. These two classes have features that are similar to each other and dissimilar to each other. If the classes are similar, then it can be classified as a class A. If the data types are, if data points are not similar, it can be classified into class B. So based on that, you classify the two categories. One is class A, one is class B. Now, the algorithm which may implement the classification on a data set is known as the classifier. There are two types of classification. One is binary classifier, second one is multi-class classifier. So what is a binary classifier? If the classification problem has only two possible outcomes, then it is called binary classifier. Examples say yes or no, male or female, spam or not spam, cat or dog. If the classification problem has more than two outcomes, then it is called as multi-class classifier. Examples of classification types of crops, classification of types of music. These are the examples of the multi-classifier. Then what are the learners in classification problem? In the classification problem, there are two types of learners. One is lazy learners, second one is eager learners. What is the lazy learners? Lazy learners firstly stores the training data set and wait until it reaches the test data set. In lazy learner case, classification is done on the basis of the most related data stored in the training data set. It takes less time in training but more time for prediction. Examples of Karen algorithm, cache-based reasoning. These are the examples of lazy learners. Next, eager learners. Eager learners develop a classification model based on the training data set before receiving a test data set. Opposite to lazy learners, eager learners takes more time in learning and less time in production. Examples of decision trees, Navipace, ANM. These are examples of the these learners. Next one, decision tree algorithm. So what is the decision tree algorithm? The decision tree belongs to the family of supervised learning algorithm. Unlike other supervised learning algorithms, the decision tree algorithm can be used for solving regression and classifying problems too. The goal of using decision tree algorithm is to create training model that can be used to predict the class or values of the target variable by learning simple decision rules inferred from period data, trained data. These are two types. One is types of decision trees are based on the types of target variables we have. It can be two types. One is categorical variable decision tree. Second one is continuous variable decision tree. So what is the categorical variable decision tree which has a categorical target variable? Then it is called the categorical variable decision tree. The decision tree has a continuous target variable. Then it is called continuous variable decision tree. Then the important terminology related to decision tree: first, root node, splitting, decision node, leaf, terminal node, branch, parent and child node. What is the root node? It represents the entire population or sample, and this feature gets divided into two or more homogeneous sets. What is splitting? It is a process of dividing a node into two or more subnodes. That is called splitting. Or the decision node. When subnode splits into further subnodes, then it is called the decision node. Leaf or terminal node. Nodes do not split is called a leaf or terminal node. What is the pruning? Pruning when you removing the subnodes of decision node. This process is called pruning. You can say the opposite process of splitting. What is the branch and subtree? A subsection of the entire tree is called branch or subtree. What is the parent and child node? A node which is divided into subnodes is called the parent node of subnodes, whereas subnodes are the child of a parent node. Here you take one example here. Here is a root node. A root node can be divided into two nodes. One is decision node, one is decision node. So decision node also they were splitting into two types. One is terminal node, decision node. Malli decision node can be split into two nodes, terminal node and terminal node. Again here decision node A can be divided into two nodes B and C. B is the terminal node and B is the terminal node. B is the terminal node here. Here B is the terminal node. B is the terminal node and C is the terminal node. This is called here A is the parent node of B and C. Here A is the parent of B and C. So this is converted with decision node. Next, how does the decision tree algorithm works? In decision tree algorithm works for predicting the class of the given data set. The algorithm starts from the root node of the tree. The algorithm compares the values of the root attributes with the record attribute, and based on the comparison, follow the branch and jumps to the next node. What is the step 1 here? Begin the tree with the root node, says that S, which contains the complete data set. What is the second step here? Find the best attribute in the data set using the attribute selection methods. So, what is the third one? Divide the X into the subset that contains possible values for the best attribute. What is step 4? Generate the decision tree node which contains the best attribute. What is the fifth one? Recursively make new decision tree using the subset of the data set created in step 3. Continue the process until stage is reached where you cannot further classify the nodes and called the final node as a leaf node. For example, suppose there is a candidate who has a job offer and wants to decide whether he should accept offer or not. So to solve this problem, the decision tree starts with the root node, that is the salary attributed by the ASM. That is called the root node can be split in further into the next decision node distinct from the office. One leaf node based on the corresponding labels. The next decision node if further can be here. First you have to check the condition. What the condition here? If the for example if the condition is if salary is in between these two, that is called 50,000 or 80,000. If condition true, then you have to check the condition here. If salary if salary between these two, you have to agree that one. If salary does not contain these, if salary consists of these two, then you have to agree that one. Then you have to check the condition. Office near to home. Again, your office near to home, your condition satisfied. Then you have to provide the cap facility. And if you provide the cap facility, then you have to accept the offer. If does not provide the cap facility, then it does not decline the offer. If you provide the cap facility, then you accept the offer. If does not provide the cap facility, you decline the offer. In what the first case here, if the salary is between these two conditions, then you have to accept the offer. Then you have to check the condition here. If the salary does not between these two items, then you have to decline the offer. That is the first condition. So what is the second condition here? If the office, if your condition is the office near to home, you have satisfied this condition, then you have to check the condition again. If the condition is not offered, that means the office is near to home. If the office does not near to home, then you have to decline the offer. That is the second condition. So what is the third condition here? If the office is near to home, if condition is satisfied, again you check the condition here. What is the condition here? It provides the cap facility or not. If it is provided, then you have to accept the offer. If does not provide the cap facility, it does not. You have to decline the offer. This is called decision tree. So based on the condition only, if condition is satisfied, go to the next step. Again check the condition here. Is satisfied or not? If satisfied, you have to go to the next step. If does not satisfied, you have to stop the condition here. This is called decision tree condition. This is called first root node. In root node, you have to check the condition here. If the salary is in between these two, you have to check you have to satisfy this condition. You have to go to the next step here. What is the next step here? You have the office nearby. If office nearby house or not. If office is nearby house, you have to check the condition true. You can go to the next condition. What is the next condition? Provide a cap facility or not. If it is provided, then you have to accept the offer. If it is not provided, it decline the offer. This is called decision tree algorithm. This is example of the decision tree algorithm. Next, what are the attribute selection methods? While implementing decision tree, the main issue arises that how to select the best attribute for the root node and for subnodes. So to solve this problem, there is a technique which is called attribute selection methods. You have to use the ASM. What is the ASM? Attribute selection method. Based on that, you have to find the best attributes. How to find the best attribute here? By using the attribute selection methods. Now, by this measurement, you can easily select the best attributes for the nodes of the tree. There are two popular techniques of attribute selection methods, which are information gain, Gini index. What is information gain? Information gain is the measurement of changes in entropy after the segmentation of a dataset based on the attributes. It calculates how much information of a feature provides us about a class. According to the values of information gain, is split the node and build the decision tree. A decision tree algorithm always try to maximize the value of information gain, and node or attributes having the highest information gain is split first. It can be calculated using the below formula. Information gain entropy weight equal to weighted average into entropy for each feature. So what is the entropy? Entropy is a metric to measure the impurity in a given attribute. It specifies the randomness in the data. Entropy can be calculated. Entropy is equal to minus entropy of x log to p of x minus p of no log to p of no, where x is total number of samples, p of x probability of x nothing but probability of x, p of x nothing but probability of no, probability of no. What is the entropy? X equal to negative log probability of x log to probability of x minus probability of negative log to probability of negative. Gini x index is a measure of impurity of or purity used while creating the decision tree in the cart classification and regression tree algorithm. And attributes with a low Gini index should be performed as compared to the high Gini index. It only creates binary splits, and the cart algorithm uses the Gini index to create binary splits. Gini index can be calculated using the below formula: Gini index minus 1 minus sigma j probability p of j square, p into j, p of j square. Pruning, getting the optimal decision tree. Pruning is a process of deleting the unnecessary nodes from the tree in order to get the optimal decision tree. What is the cost compulsive pruning? Reduce the error pruning. So what is the inductive bias? The inductive bias of decision tree refers to the assumption and performance that are built into the decision tree algorithm, which guide towards certain types of solutions when learning from data. Here are some key components of the inductive bias of decision trees: top-down greedy approach, recursive partitioning, future selection, bias toward binary splits. So what is top-down greedy approach? The decision tree builds the tree from the top down, selecting the best features to split on at each node in a greedy fashion without considering the impact of the future decision on the tree as a whole. What is the recursive partitioning? A decision tree recursive partition the future space into smaller and smaller regions based on the selected features. So what is the future selection? Decision tree select the most informative features to split on at each node according to some criterion such as information gain and Gini immunity. Bias toward binary splits. Decision tree typically splits fixed in binary categories, although there are some variants that allow for multi-way splits. So what are the issues of decision tree algorithm? Determine how deploy deeply to grow the decision tree, handling the continuous attribute, choosing the appropriate attribute selection features, handling the training data set missing attribute values, handling the attributes with different cards, improving the computational efficiency. So